Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here. Just some quick housekeeping. Rabbi Yamin Levy, who some of you will be familiar with from the Xabura, one of our teachers, he's just published a new book, The Mysticism of Andalusia. So we recommend everybody to get a copy on Amazon. I wanted to just start with a little midrash before we introduce our guest tonight. Midrash in Sotah, which talks about the moment when Amrom, the father of Moshe Rabbeinu, hears about the decree to kill the boys, the baby boys. He decides he's going to divorce his wife because the purpose of marriage, procreation, isn't viable to him. Therefore, as a Gadol Hador, the Gemara says he was at the time, he decided that this is not worthy of continuing the marriage. The people of Israel followed him, it says. But what happens or ensues is that his daughter appears to him and in despair, saying, Abba, kasher, gezoretcha, yoter, Michel, Paro. What you're doing is even greater than the decree of Paro, because he just decreed about the boys. You're decreeing the boys and the girls. He's not righteous, you are righteous. And we know from Eob that those who are righteous, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to. Amram decides to change his mind, and he ends up remarrying Yocheved, or going back to the wife. And it says that the people of Israel went back to their wives as well. A key point of that story was that Amram had the ability to accept the truth regardless of the source. As a Gadol Hador, he had made his decision, but he was willing to listen to a different source, his daughter, to change the course of a lot of the people of Israel remarrying their wives. And I think it's very, very fitting that Chacham Amram Nemeth is a namesake, because something that I've learned about Chacham Amram in the little time that I've known of him is that he truly embodies the principle of accepting the truth regardless of the source. He was raised in Golders Green, studied at Gateshead Yeshiva, spent many years at the Montefiore Kollel with the Montefiore Endowment, taught at Naima JPS, is now the head of Jewish studies at Naima JPS, and he is the Rosh Bet Midrash of an institution of British Jewry, Jewish Learning Exchange, the JLE, and we are so honored to have him here tonight, and please God, many, many more occasions. So,
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I've introduced myself to the people in the room. Thank you for the lovely, kind words, for the introduction. Actually, Miriam is my wife, so it's easier to listen to your sister than your wife, I think, or your daughter than your wife, I guess. But thank God we have a good marriage, and this is normally our date night, Sunday night, because thank God I have a very busy life, and so we normally go out to eat. So, Sinner, I didn't ask for any money for this share. I'm a tough student of Rabbi Levy. You try and give as much as you can for free. But at least he saved me £100 because we're not eating out tonight. And I asked if my wife could come here, but at the end, she said she'll pass. She's had enough of my voice the whole day. So I guess Sina saved me £100. But interestingly, I have a bone to pick with Sina. I've known Alicia longer than Sina. Alicia is, for those of you who don't know, Sina's brother, because we did a very beautiful Shabbat at Wembley about 6 years ago. And we had a great time together. It was a massive laugh. We enjoyed it. And he spoke about becoming a doctor from, what was the country? From Iran to London. And I just spoke about Shabbat. So I had a more mundane topic, I would guess. His was more exotic, but we got on well despite. But Sinner, now I worked for many years in the Montefiore Endowment. I did many courses there and I taught there. And every few months there's a trustees meeting, which are very official. And you don't make jokes in those meetings. And everyone had to give a report in. So I'm the yeshivish guy. I wrote a few things. We learned this. We in the yeshiva, we just get to the point. We learned these points. People came. We spent this amount of money. It was about half an A4 page. And for years, that was fine. But then the Montefiore started sponsoring part of the Habura's cost. And then Sinner's report came through. Graphs and pictures and you would have thought they were investing millions and millions of pounds, and it really stood mine out. So there was like a book size of the Habura, and then there was Amram Nemeth's like A5 maybe sheet of the rest. But on a serious note, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me to come and speak. But I am a student of Rabbi Levy now. I learned in yeshiva, thank God, for many years. and in Kollel for many years. And at 27, I wasn't interested in picking up any more rebbes or rabbis. I had more than, not in a bitter way, but I had more than my fair share of teachers over the years, and I was pretty done. I went to Maida Vale to teach in both the venerable institutions of the Montefiore College and Naima, just for my career, to give over as a rabbi myself. And Rabbi Levi was the bankroll. That's what I thought originally. He would pay my salary and he would enable it to happen. But actually, I know he was very passionate about the Habura originally, because I was in his house every day, and he just passed away, for those of you who don't know, a few months ago. And I was very close to him. And he became, in terms of practical rabbinics, I would say, like my guide. We spoke about, I think, absolutely everything over the years, especially because he was older and he was housebound. So in his heyday, he had no time for anyone. He was running around, but he had time, and we would speak for hours and hours about many, many, many topics. I want to devote this year. We're only still a few months since his passing, and we mustn't forget, he did a phenomenal amount for Anglo Jewry. He was very, very passionate, and he's also a very, very open-minded person. And open-minded means he would, with any Jew that wanted to learn, whether he was very, very frum or very, very not frum, it didn't make a difference to him. Some people are very open-minded to frummers, and some people are very open-minded only to secular people. But he was naturally open-minded, and he was a growing person, and he recognized that in other people. And he taught me a lot. I want to dedicate this share to his neshama should have an aliyah, and all the Torah that he's brought into Klal Yisrael over the years of thousands of students should be elevated through him. But let's move on. So I'll tell you where we're up to. Originally, I was meant to give a share on the laws of tzitzis, which I learned a few months ago. But then, unfortunately, my daughter was unwell, so I took like a month off, roughly. But now, thank God, she's better. But I give shiurim of where I'm up to. I'm not the kind of guy who downloads shiurim that I've stored on a file, not because I believe that's wrong, it's because I lose them normally after I've given them already, and I just rely on my memory. So wherever I'm up to, that's what I speak about. And in the JLE, we have a morning chabura where we're doing ketzad mevarchin, how to make a blessing on fruit. And we hit the sugya of ein osin mitzvot chavilot, which means don't bundle up mitzvot together. And the reason why you have to be careful for this, we'll see. But don't push mitzvot together. That's it. The rest is details. But I've got to do something for an hour, so I'll tell you the details, right? But the rest is details. Don't bundle mitzvot together. Now, I've always seen this Gemara, because you hit it many times throughout Shas, and I've never clarified it, and it always confused me. And I've unconfused it for myself, and I'll share my unconfusion with you. I'm building up about 5 or 6 principles over the next 3/4 of an hour, what this exactly means. And more directly, because thank God, with 2 weeks before the beautiful Chag of Pesach, how it very directly relates to the halachot of Seder night. So through the laws of Seder, they'll reflect upon each other. The laws of chavilot, of bundling up mitzvot, will reflect upon Seder night, and the rules of Seder night will reflect upon the principles of chavilot, and we'll learn about both together. So let's start. Well, Sinna mentioned before the Gemara and Sota, that was Daf Yud Aleph. We go back to Daf Ches. And I've just come on the journey with me, and I'd say it's fairly difficult, but Sinna said it's a very educated crowd, and so did Alicia as well. And it seems to be so. But I would like to think that, especially split up into numbers, if you get lost, then a lot of it should be independent pieces of information. I like to generally give shiurim like that, because not everyone has the processing skills to remember the question in the beginning and halt. And in Yiddish, you say halt kop until the end of where it goes. But I especially chunk it so that if you just like independent piece of information, you should be able to come out with something as well. But let's start. Okay. We're on, I presume they all have the sources online, right? Yeah, it's been sent, right? So look at the blue on source 1. Tana Rabbana. Ein mashkin shtei soitos ka'achas. We don't give to drink 2 soitas in one. A soita is a woman who's been accused of being unfaithful to her husband, and she has a special water that has the name of Hashem inside the water. But don't do it in one go, which is the principle. I want to jump now to the pink, where it says if you look at the pink line, the beginning of the line is roseches, and the third last line is v'ha, the third last word. V'ha ein oisim mitzvahs chavilot chavilot. We don't bundle up mitzvahs together. Desnan, as we learned, ein mashkin shtei soitos ka'achas. We don't give to drink 2 soitos in one go. Ve'ein matarin shnei mutzarin ka'achas. We also don't purify 2 people who have tsaras, leprosy on the skin in one go. Ve'ein roitzis shnei avadim ka'achas. And we don't bang a hole in the ear of 2 slaves in one go. We don't decapitate 2 calves in one go. We don't bundle up mitzvahs together. And this is relevant everywhere. Don't do 2 mitzvahs together. Don't take out 2 sifrei Torah on Shabbat and wait maybe to do one before the other. Don't get 2 babies in a synagogue and put them in the front of the shul to wait to do the Brit Milah one after the other. What's the reason for that? Why was it such a problem? And says Rashi, it says the Rashbam, because it looks like a burden. It looks like you're trying to do it as quick as possible. And I'll point out to you that it's unlikely, if you look through all the sources, that bundling up mitzvot, if you're still confused as to what this is, it will be clarified as the evening wears on. It's unlikely this ruins the mitzvah. So if you have 2 babies that you have to do a Brit Milah, and you bundle them up one next to the other, you do one Brit and then another Brit, it's unlikely the Brit wasn't kasher. If you have 2 women who need to drink the sotah, and you put them next to each other and you give them the drink, it's unlikely that you didn't give them to drink halachically correctly. It's unlikely this ruins it. But this is the cream of a mitzvah, and this is the best way to perform a mitzvah. Chavilot, and in Hebrew you would say it's not ma'akev. It's probably a rabbinical rule. Some Rishonim go to the radical extreme of saying it's a Torah rule. It's unlikely. It's presumably a rabbinical rule. But whenever we do a mitzvah, then generally the principle, just like when Hashem gave us the manna, he gave it to us, says Rashi, with a cloud, with the dew below and the dew above, to show it's not enough just to give something to the Jewish people. He could have just given us the food. He wrapped it to show the love and the care. We reciprocate that by doing our mitzvah in the optimum way as well. We have all these rules. Tadeh v'she'eno tadeh, tadeh kadem. The more frequent mitzvah comes first. Does that ruin the mitzvah necessarily? Maybe yes, maybe not. But all these, when we keep all these principles with mitzvah, it just shows that we care slightly more about them. So that's chavilot. Don't bundle the 2 mitzvah together. And the Gemara says there's a pasuk. The Gemara says we don't need a pasuk. We don't bundle mitzvah together. Now here we were specifically talking about, says, look at the last word of the Gemara. Oma abaya v'itema Rav Kana, lo kashya. It's not difficult to differentiate between the earlier Gemara and this Gemara. And don't worry too much as to what that means, because we have only a limited time. Kan b'kohen echad, kan b'shnei kohanim. And let me explain to you what I think that means. You're in the Bet HaMikdash, there's 2 unfaithful women next to each other. They both need to drink specific amount of water, which has Hashem's name in, to test whether they've been faithful or not. Does the man not have to drink? That's the classic question. No, he doesn't. Yes, fair enough. That's Habura, share number 45. You used to say the numbers, because I used to listen in the beginning. Rabbi Dweck said, are we going to say numbers when it's 505? And I remember right. So I think in share 702, we'll discuss why the man doesn't have to drink. I did once hear an answer, I just don't remember. Well, it reflects the Jewish marriage effectively. But either way, when there's one Kohen, he's going to get the 2 women, and it's the man getting the women, oh my gosh, and he's going to put them next to each other. After he puts them next to each other, he's then going to, one can drink first, the other can drink afterwards. That's still chavilot. Because even putting 2 mitzvot next to each other, you're feeling a bit queasy. These are mitzvot, these are women, that's true. But they're putting the 2 mitzvot next to each other, you're bundling it up. Even if I walk past and take a helicopter view and I see 2 people who are going to do mitzvot on, that's not beautiful. It's a mitzvah at the end of the day. Ein osim mitzvot chavilot. Don't bundle it, even if actually they're going to drink one after the other. A bishnei b'nei adam, when there are 2 people, 2 kohanim performing it, that's not a problem. When it's one person trying to do 2 obligations, that looks like you're bundling it up. Whereas 2 separate kohanim performing 2 separate mitzvah, who says the 2 are connected at all, and therefore it's permitted? Is everyone with me so far? Okay, it's a fairly difficult Gemara, but like I said, I was allowed to go slightly more difficult. I'm taking the liberty of that. And I've tried not to go too into the back and forth because it's not the focus of this share. The focus of this is just to give you introduction to chavilot, bundling it up. One person is a problem because one person will take two ladies, make them stand there. That's deemed to be disrespectful. Get one person in, give them the valid attention, then they can go, or they can explode, or whatever, or their intestines will go in, however you understand they can go. Then you bring the next person in, okay? Don't put them together. That's deemed to be disrespectful. Two people, look at the Gemara in the green. I think Rabbi Duet was involved in Merkava, which is one of the only websites that gives you the Tzuras Hadaf together with the Nukudat. Now, why I don't never now because Gemara I think is hard enough for many people. So why would you not give the vowels as well? And unfortunately, I think the website is not finished properly. There's a lot more to do, so anyone can step up. Lo kasher kan b'kohen achad kan b'shnei kohanim. Two kohanim, that's a problem. That's okay because they're two separate mitzvot. It's not deemed to be something which they're doing together. One kohen bundling up mitzvot together is a problem. Now, how is that relevant to all these special Shabbatot we've come through? Because also, we take out two Sifrei Torah. And halachically, the Yerushalmi said, that's chavilot. You're taking out two Sifrei Torah. For one, you're reading the Parsha of the week. For one, you're reading Parshat Para, Parshat Zachar, Parshat HaChodesh. And you're putting them maybe on the bim or even next to each other. We don't really have a geographical location of how far or how close, but they're in the center of the shul. That should be bundling up mitzvot as well, correct? It's just like the Satah, where you take the two ladies who have meant the mitzvot done to them, and they're standing together in the Beis Hamikdash. And then you give them to drink one after the other. But just the bundling together was deemed to be disrespectful. So presumably, we should also be bothered. We've just been to shul last week and the week before and the week before. It's a bar mitzvah teacher's nightmare when you forget that it's a special Shabbat, trust me. And the mafte and Rosh Chodesh, and I'm very scatty naturally, and I don't naturally do calendars. So lucky I finished bar mitzvah teaching because I had some hair-raising stories. But either way, you have two Sifrei Torah together. So it's chavit the same as Satah. Even though you're performing, you're laning one after the other, you're still bundling them initially. And that may be seen to be disrespectful. So Maimonides, who was born in Cordoba, who traveled to Morocco, then eventually to Israel, and then to Egypt, correct? So far, right? So he was someone who said, actually, I'm much more bothered about two mitzvot being performed together at the same time, even by two different people. But I don't mind if you gather two mitzvot to be done together as long as they're done consecutively. So therefore, consequently, you can take out two Sifrei Torah, you could put them on the bima or someone will sit there because they're going to be done consecutively even by one person. You're going to tell me you're bundling it? No, I don't mind bundling it as long as the action of the mitzvah is not done together. I'm more bothered, says the Rambam, with two people together performing the mitzvah on a holistic point of view. I'm looking globally at what's happening. I don't like that. I'm not looking individualistically. And therefore, he says that's a problem. And therefore, on Shabbat, when we have a special Shabbat, we can take out the two Sifrei Torah. They could be bundled together to await the performance of the mitzvah, because ultimately, we're only going to do the mafte right at the end. Now, some of you may be confused at this point, but I'll read it inside. Just look at 3, because this is an introduction to Chavilah. B'yom sheyesh bet Sifrei Torah, lo yiftechu hashniya, lo yasir hamape ad sheyiglalu harishon. This is what we do. On the day where there's 2 Sifrei Torah, we don't open the second one and then remove it until the first one's rolled up. This is what we do because of embarrassing for mitzvah, but it's not because of Chavilah. We don't get rid of the first one until the second one's on the bima, on the teva. So you shouldn't, your mind shouldn't wander from a mitzvah. and we can have the second one even when the first one is still there. On that, the Magen Avram says, what's going on? There's a Yerushalmi, this maybe is Chavilat. Says, no, you're Tosfot. Leave that side of Europe around, right? The Rambam says there was never a problem to have two mitzvot bundled in a waiting to perform the mitzvah, as long as they're performed consecutively. And therefore, ultimately, with the Sefer Torah too, you have two mitzvot. It looks pretty bundled. There's two people holding them, but they're not being performed at the same time. I'm much more bothered about the performance. And he goes back to the Gemara in Satah, and he says two people is a problem because they're doing it at the same time. One person is okay. That's an introduction. It has nothing to do with the rest of the shir. It has nothing to do with the rest of the shir. This is my confusion number one that I discovered last week. And I've unraveled it for you and explained to you what I mean. Because we're now going to enter into a different area of bundling mitzvot, which has absolutely nothing to do with this one. And I till now, when I've hit this, I was confused because you'll see they're very similar yet very different. We've just discussed two mitzvot that are done at the same time. Now, whether it's bundling them to perform them one after the other, but the bundling together in a waiting to perform the mitzvah is a problem, or whether we said, according to the Rambam, doing them at the same time, right? But either way, there are two separate mitzvot, and you're somehow bundling them together. Is everyone clear with that? Now, with regard to Seder night, we meet a new kind of bundling. When you have one utensil to do a mitzvah with, and you do two mitzvot with it. Now, try and get your head around that. You have a Kiddush cup, which you use for Birkat Hamazon and Kiddush. Go and get yourself some more wine. Get yourself another cup. Stop stuffing all your obligations onto one. But think of the difference there. Now we have one mitzvah one utensil or one article, which is being used for two mitzvot. Until now, the famous Gemara in Satah and Sifrei Torah and women exploding, that's two mitzvot, which are done at the same time or prepared to be done at the same time. We move away. This was always my first confusion, so I made this differentiation last week. This has nothing to do with Seder night. Even though if you learn from the halachot of Seder night, you constantly meet chavilat everywhere, karpas, matzah, wine, as we'll see. But there's nothing to do with it, because the discussion we're going to have over the next half an hour is one mitzvah, one article, one utensil used for two mitzvot. Now,
but not simultaneously.
Not simultaneously, presumably not simultaneously. You'll tell me, because it could be that's what we're going to discuss. But I want to just keep it simple. Your point is valid. Maybe, but generally, at least it's not two separate. We've discussed two separate mitzvot being done at the same time. We're now going to discuss not two mitzvot being done at the same time, but two mitzvot being done at different times, but using one utensil. Right to the end, we'll come to Sinner's point. Right to the end. But until now, I wouldn't let it confuse you. I'd make you do it now. You'll see what I mean. Look now at source 5. It's the green. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Huna said in the name of Rav Sheshes, Ein Amrim, we don't say Shtei Kudushat al Kos Echad. We don't say Havdalah and Birkat Hamazon. If, let's say, you were in the middle of, it was Erev Shabbat, and you want to stop your meal in order to make Kiddush, and you want to use a cup of wine for the Birkat Hamazon, don't use the same cup of wine for your Birkat Hamazon and the Kiddush. Now, like Sinner has said, they're not being done at the same time, but it's the reverse. You're doing two mitzvot at different times, but you're using one utensil. Go and spend another $5. Go and spend another £2. Never deem these mitzvot as a so-called burden. Beforehand, the burden was in terms of its time. Now the burden is in terms of the utensil. And look carefully at the Gemara. Don't ever make two mitzvot with wine in one cup. My Tama, says the Gemara. What's the reason? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, The fishein asin mitzvot chavilot chavilot. We don't bundle up mitzvot together on one utensil. Nothing to do with sata with two at the same time. Okay. And the Gemara asks, we do and we don't. So what's the reason? And you'll need this information. So I put it in big in the Rashi writing. I much prefer always to print the actual tzuras at the printing of the page rather than the easier print. I just find it's just slightly more authentic. Shtei Kedushat, says the Rashbam, it's the Rashi writing at the bottom of this source. Birchat HaMazon, Kore Kedusha Kekiddush, Hainu Kulam Shtei Mitzvot. Birchat HaMazon is called holy like Kiddush, therefore it's considered to be two mitzvot. Chavilot, Chavilot, and what's the reason why you can't? The Mechsi, it seems, hence the title of my share, it's perceptions. The Mechsi Aleha Kamasoi. It's deemed from the onlooker's perspective as if it's a burden. Even think of maritime, all these kind of halachot. Don't do something that's perceived as wrong. Maybe here you know what you're doing. You know you're happy to have other wine, just you want to save some money. It's deemed from the onlooker. So we're a big believer in being careful what the onlooker thinks. We're a big believer in respecting the onlooker is looking at you. And normally in Marasaian terms, especially if you're more religious, especially if you're wearing a kippah in Maritime. But why? Because someone's looking at you. And, you know, in Yiddish, there's the next expression, five the bell, what do I care? It's like, what do I care? I'm going to be religious because of him? No, actually you are, yes, because of someone else. That's everywhere in the Torah, because we're very conscious of everyone looking at everyone. Even though there's benefit of the doubt, it doesn't work. Most people, I'm not giving the benefit of the doubt, because a lot of people are in a very negative place, and they're looking around to see what everyone else is doing. It's not the reality. That's the essence of Maritime. And this is like a sniff, a little branch of Maritime. It looks like a burden for you, and therefore we don't do it. Okay, we've now introduced the share, because that's what we're going to talk about over the next half an hour. One utensil used for two mitzvot. So where's that relevant to on Seder night? Kiddush and Havdalah, right? Where else? Matzah. How a matzah? Okay, correct. Okay, right. Different times, maybe. Oh, use the same matzah for both. Right, it could be. Okay. It could be the same mitzvah. You could. Okay, that's an interesting one. Right. Anyone else? Karpas Amara. Everything is bundling up. It's a complete mess, the whole thing with this principle. No, it is. And everyone's bothered with that. Because you're bundling it all together. Is it true or not true?
Yeah.
Well, you got a problem with the concept itself?
I guess maybe a little.
Go on.
I don't know. I don't really understand why it's an issue to why a mitzvah aren't done from the perspective of others. So why should it matter?
I think they are a bit.
Are they?
Yeah.
Is that the function of a mitzvah?
No, a semi-function. It's a very good point. I've bothered about the same thing as you, so I'm happy you addressed that. So we have a question, in case you couldn't hear on the Zoom, was that why are you so worried about everyone else's perception of your mitzvah? First of all, you could maybe say, maybe it looks to yourself, even if there's no one in the room. It's deemed to yourself. You should be respectful in the way that you do it. But I don't think that's so important. I think there's a lot that we do externally that influences the way we respond to certain mitzvah. At the end of the day, everyone is learning from everyone the whole time. So look, I'm a rabbi, I guess. People come to my house, they're learning as to how I treat my family. Well, looking after my family is a mitzvah. Why is it their business? Okay, they're watching me. Now there's a hierarchy, but everyone's watching everyone. So everyone's looking the way everyone performs mitzvah. I don't want to look at that mitzvah and see them bundling on, and it looks like you can't bother to go and get another cup of wine. Well, you could say it's slightly subtle. And that I introduced, I've got the same problem as you. And I would say that we're responding to Hashem in the way He gave us the manna as well. And the mitzvot generally are done. Like when you give a present to anyone, I know it's very simple, but when you give a present to anyone, you can wrap it or you can't wrap it. Now the main present is there either way. So the subtlety of the mitzvah is the beauty of how we respect the mitzvah. Go on. I
was going to say, do you think it's not a barrier to achieving a state of kavana to do mitzvot? So
some people say that.
So self-consciously.
Yeah. Some people say that it's not the mainstream approach, that because you can't concentrate on two mitzvot together, That's the reason why maybe you don't do two mitzvot together.
Rashi says, he's saying that on Sotah, he says that you're rushing.
Where does Rashi say that? With Chabilot or the Rashi earlier? In Pesachim. Right, I understand. But he's saying something. I don't know your first name, I'm sorry. Daniel's saying that's how the classical way to understand. But Daniel, that means what we're saying, just for people on Zoom, is that, right, and I agree with you, but we're understanding, just before we go further, and you'll need this information in your head, and that we've raised like a few very good points over here. What's the essence of this? Don't bundle up mitzvot together. Maybe the satire you can understand, it looks really bad to bundle, to prepare, just do it separately and show the respect for each one. Let's leave that behind, because now we're talking about one utensil with two mitzvah. So Daniel has made a few valid points. First of all, the perception of others when you do a mitzvah, is that important? Look, I would say yes. It definitely is important because everyone's learning from everyone the whole time. So you want to show the optimum performance, especially if you're someone who other people respect. And it's similar to maybe to maritime. Maritime has two reasons to it. Rabbi Weiss has got a big shtickle Torah as to which one it is. The maritime has perceptions, and also so you shouldn't confuse people. So there's two elements to maritime, to not do something. There's maybe I'm going to be perceived as someone who's guilty, or maybe not that. It's because I'm more religious, someone else will watch me and change their actions thereby, or because of. But I would say, yes, it does make a difference. Just like people, you watch someone how to deal with their family, how to deal with anything or business, you watch the way a person does it, it's fun. If you respect that person, you know there's someone who does it, you want to see they're spending all their money and they're showing the respect to it. Maybe subtly, but I'm happy with subtleties with mitzvah. Because if it's the whole purpose of existence, then we want to do it properly. And subtleties in any relationships are everything. In a love relationship, a subtlety is everything. Just to say, give like money to your wife or to your kids is horrible, right? It's subtleties, the way you give it, the care. The chabilot is the care. It's the wrapping of a mitzvah. It's not ma'akeh, but we'll never ruin it. I agree with you. That was number one, which Daniel has raised. Number two, he's saying he thinks it's more about concentration, that you can't concentrate on two. I would say he's similar to Tosfot and Moed Katan, who says similar, and someone else I don't remember as well. So that could be. Yeah, so if you're not happy with, I like this one because it's going to help me to answer all my other questions, right? And I have to be paid for something, right? So rabbis always take the one they like and then you use it for everything. But look, I'm happy to go through that one with you because that's definitely true, that will take a whole day to go through. I'm trying to summarize it, but you're right. It could be, it's just there because you can't concentrate on two at the same time. And I'll show you as we go through the shir, I think you'll see some Rishonim would say probably like you. Have I answered your question?
More or less.
What's the less?
Oh no, I think it's okay.
Okay, just an English response. It's never funny, right? No, I'm the same also, don't worry. Okay, fine. Okay, so we're good to carry on? Don't use one cup for two mitzvot. Yep. If you do, you shouldn't be part of this course. Come on. Okay, so we're coming to all the mitzvot. That's the rest of my shade, slightly lighter. I want to discuss the mitzvot. Harav Yosef 6, Harav Yosef Tov Alem. He was a Python. I'm presuming this course we're experts much more on Pythons and how the piyutim work. I presume there's been a trip to the Cairo Geniza. Am I right?
And Andalusia.
Has there been to the Cairo Geniza?
Yeah, we had someone come and do it online.
Oh, I see. Right.
During COVID.
Right. Because all the Python now, this is one throughout actually Arabic Psachim, you see where the Pythons make a difference halachically. They weren't just some poets who wrote, they didn't know the halacha. No, they had to be involved in love languages. But we don't, it's not true. And you see Tosfos, a few places here quotes what we say on Shabbos, what we say on Yom Tov. It's so interesting. We don't associate the two together. That's our spiritual time when we're connecting to something deeper. It's not the time to get involved with minutiae of halacha. But of course, Tosfos jumps onto the yotus we say next week of Shabbos Agadol. Kosav b'sidroi. He says in his book, Lama Shah Yurakois Boin Techila. Why do we have karpas, as you mentioned? Lifto Chazeres mi bracha ru'uyala. To exempt the lettuce from the bracha hanenin of benefit of food that's needed for it. The reason why we have karpas is that so later on, when we get to the marah, we won't have to make hadamah. We can jump straight into Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, al achilat marah. Why don't we want to do the two together? Because it's chavilot, because it's bundling, correct. But says Tosfot, nah, Pythons, get out of the halachic world. Velesa, that's not true. The reason why we dip karpa at the beginning of the seder is that we know the children will ask. Like we do, the whole point is it's a family-based experience. Don't start bringing chavilot. It's such a cute thing. The children will ask. You're coming along. You're saying the reason is that later on. That's not true. But lo shaykh can't chavilot. This is, and we don't have bundles. Elo betray nili. And this is going to help us for the rest of Seder night. Only with two separate things that you put together. Think of the reason as to why bundling is a problem. Because it's deemed, there's a perception that you want to bundle it up. If I have to make ha'adamah just to eat my lettuce, it's not deemed to be bundling mitzvot together, for heaven's sake. I'm just making ha'adamah so I can do the mitzvah. There's not a separate mitzvah of making ha'adamah and a separate mitzvah of lettuce. I have to make ha'adamah in order to eat my lettuce. So if a person looks at me and says, it looks like you're bundling, I was like, you don't even know what's going on in Seder night. What do you mean I'm bundling mitzvah? There wasn't a mitzvah to make ha'adamah on Seder night and a mitzvah to do karpas. Marah. There was a mitzvah to do marah, which I have to do ha'adamah for. So it's not deemed to be a burden. It's not deemed to be perceived as a burden. Is everyone with that? Yeah. And therefore, Rabbi Yosef Tov Alem, sitting in the Cairo Geniza, didn't make it towards Tosfot. I'm sorry. Because actually, don't try and say bundling mitzvot is relevant to the hadamah of marah. And therefore, the reason why we do karpas at the beginning of the set is that children will ask, not that we make adamah and we think of the lettuce later, so that later on we won't have to make a new bracha, because if we do, it will be bundling it together. That's not a problem. Oh, you're putting hadamah, the mitzvah of making a bracha on food next to lettuce. That's not a problem. It's not like kiddush and birkat hamazon that are two separate entities which you're bundling together onto one. We've had very good questions here, and thank you for that. Okay, I hope everyone with me, or I hope everyone's asleep. Yeah. Are we going? Let's carry on with Seder night, ladies and gentlemen, please. And we carry on now. We get to the mitzvah of matzah. It's exactly the same as we just discussed. And Rabbi Kiva Eger, he connects the two together. I'm a yeshiva guy, so Rabbi Kiva Eger is like exciting, right? Because he'll always, if he says, look at another Gemara, you want to look at other Gemara and see what the connection is between the two. And he says these two are exactly the same. There's a mitzvah, you have to, if you have two pieces of bread in front of you, forget Pesach, then which one do you make a bracha on? Now that's a big deal, like I was saying before, because how you make the bracha, the rabbis were busy with. Because making a bracha is a mitzvah, it shows thanks to Hashem. I want to thank, you see throughout Ketim Mebarchim, the philosophy of the parak is, I want to thank in the optimum way, which is why Shivat Haminim comes before other fruits, as we knew on Tu B'Shvat, because thanking is a big deal. Like when you, I know it sounds very simple, I know, but it's just, if you go through Ketim Mebarchim, Ala Peirah, that was what the Gemara was doing the whole time. You eat in someone's house, you didn't just say thank you, the meat was very well done, the conversation was good, and you think about what you thank first, what's more important to the host. Brachot are exactly the same, in my feeble understanding of it. Now you have a bigger piece or a whole piece. Which one do you make the bracha on? Okay, different opinions. Some say whole, some say bigger, some say it doesn't make a difference, some say if it's wheat, if it's barley. Which one do you pick up first to say hamotzi lechem min haaretz? The bigger piece, because that shows more respect, or the whole piece, the big, or the piece that's open because you can eat it quicker than it's whole, etc., etc., etc. Go look at Daf Lamed Tet Amud Bet. But on Pesach, what do? You take your lechem mishnah. I think the Spartan would do exactly the same. You take two matzot and you have the broken one in the middle. Agreed? Seder night, yeah? Yep. Okay. I don't see why there should be a difference. This is a Shulchan Aruch, and I want you to look at 1, 2, 3. 5 lines up from the bottom of source 7. And at this point, my Wi-Fi was broken, so it didn't let me. You have to log into Merkava to put in the vowels. I wasn't logged in, so there's no vowels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, Hakol Modim. Everyone agrees, but Pesach with Pesach, Shemeniach Prusa B'toch Shlema Ubatzeya. You take the piece, you put it in between the two matzot, and you make hamotzi and alachilat matzah. Don't start thinking about the whole and the half. Get the whole for lechem mishnah, get your half piece in there because it's lechem oni. It's poor man's bread, right? And since it's poor people's bread, theirs will traditionally be broken. That's it. Everyone good with that? That's what we do. Yachad, the beginning of the seder. So it's to lechem oni, poor man's bread. We want it to be broken, like the poor person doesn't know when his next meal is coming, as all the different Torah say on Seder night, etc. Let's do that again. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa said, forget which one you make the bracha on, whole, half, wheat, barley. Let's talk about Pesach now. Hakol madim, everyone agrees, but Pesach and Pesach. So what do? What's the protocol in terms of your hamotzi bracha? Shemeniach prusa b'toch shlema. You take the little piece, put it with a big one, and the bottom one below, presumably. Ubatzeya, and you make a bracha, and you break. My tama, what's the reason? Lechem oni ksiv, poor man's bread. So put that in somewhere. Okay, but your next question is, look at Tosfot in number 8. Hakol madim, everyone agrees, but Pesach, shemeniach haprusa b'toch hashlema ubatzeya. My tama, what's the reason? Hi, lechem oni kasiv. It's poor man's bread. Now look very, very carefully. Think of what we said with the karpas. Mishum dichsiv lechem oni meniach haprusa tachat hashlema. You put the half piece under the whole one. V'nira kabatzeya al haprusa. So it looks like you're making a bracha on the poor man's bread as well. Now look at this. Watch this. Nevertheless, ein livtzoa ki im al hashlema. You only break the top one. Bala prusa, and you concentrate and focus on this half one. This is what we do halachically. Well, we'll see. Yevarich al achilat matzah. You make the other bracha of al achilat matzah. V'karchim v'achrim mishtehem yachad. You eat them both together. Gleishinira kabatzeya ala prusa. So it looks like you're breaking on the prusa. V'chein haminhag. Now look what he says. Avul ein don't. Lasot to do hamatzi, the bracha of hamatzi, v'gam al achilat matzah and al achilat matzah min haprusa on the broken one. To have a k'aseh mitzvot chavilot, because that's bundling two mitzvot together. There's a mitzvah to make hamatzi, and there's a mitzvah to have matzah. Separate them. Do one on the matzah, hamatzi, and one on the prusa of al achilat matzah. Is that true or not true? Is that correct or incorrect? Based on what we said with karpas.
Well, I don't understand because there's two in this. We focus on the top one first and then on the second
The
one?
first one you make hamatzi, and the second one you on the prusa you make al achilat matzah. Because don't do all the mitzvah of hamatzi and achilat matzah on the piece, because that's bundling up mitzvah together.
But the perception is still a problem.
The karpas, what do we say? It's not bundling up because it's just a prerequisite, the bracha to nen and the bracha to make hamatzi. And halachically, Tosfot said, but nearly it appears to me to have a bracha shel nen in. It's just a benefit bracha. It's not a burden. So basically, Tosfot says, if you've got two mitzvot, let's forget the third one. You've got the whole matzah and you've got the half piece. You're holding them together. You're about to, your family sitting around the table, you're about to say hamatzi and al achilat matzah. The first Tosfot, like Rabbi Yosef Tov Elim, the Paitan says, separate please. Make hamatzi on this one and on the prusa al achilat matzah. Don't do both brachot of hamatzi on the prusa. Why? And then you're bundling it up together. Really? You're bundling it up together? You're not bundling up together. The hamatzi is not like it does. It's not perceived to be a burden if you put hamatzi together with al achilat matzah. Hamatzi is just a prerequisite. It's one mitzvah you're doing, because the hamatzi is allowing you to do. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? Right? Yitel yadav v'yivarech al netilat yadayim. You wash your hands and make al netilat yadayim. V'yikach hamatzot kaseder shehenicham. You take the matzot haprusa bein shnei hashleimot. This is what you do on Seder night, everyone. You take your middle piece, you put it in between. V'yachazem b'yado. You grab them in your hand. V'yivarech hamotzi v'al achilat matzah. We make hamotzi and achilat matzah together. Chavilot. It's not chavilot, please. Hamotzi is just a prerequisite. It's not deemed to be a burden by doing it together. Okay. And after that, you take from the top one, mishteim b'yachad, v'yitleim b'melach, and you eat them together. Now, interestingly, we weren't sure whether al achilat matzah is on the top matzah or on the prusa. So you take a kazayit from both of them, Some Rishonim say it's the top, some say the middle, and you stuff it into your mouth, literally, if you do it properly. Does anyone do that for Seder night? You take 2 olive sizes of both, you break it off together, and you put it in and chew it, you try and swallow it together even. It's enough to put, yes, if you're hosting a kiruv Seder, I guess it's not going to be the best thing. If everyone's been through Magid for 2 hours, the last thing they want to see you do is stuff matzah into your... On the mitzvot meant to be beautiful, and surely God never had that in mind, etc., etc. Yeah, but really, we're not quite sure. Is it your top matzah where you have to have a kazayit from, or is it the next one? So because it's Seder night, interestingly, we're not usually so machmir. Because this is a Torah mitzvah, take a kazayit from both, because maybe you had the top one in mind or the second one, stuff them both into your mouth. If a kazayit is an olive size, that's okay. If it's the size of a sheep, you've got a bit of a problem. But you should still do it as much as you can. Now, did anyone do that? No. Okay, at least the bidi'a you have a kazayit is definitely okay. But the Shulchan Aruch says you should. You should try and take a kazayit from both. But interestingly, the people around the table don't have to. I would say just the person who's got the matzah in front of him. He made the bracha. It's like if you have a lulav. You make a bracha on a shafar or lulav. You think of the utensil you're doing the mitzvah with. You don't take another one. So because he thought a bit of the first one, a bit of the second one, he's got to have both. But you sitting at the table, you didn't think of both. You just relied on my bracha. So I would say the person, if you ask me halachically on Seder night, the person who's leading the Seder should take 2 kazeitim, one from the top, one from the bottom. You should eat them together. You try and chew them, or at least within the space of 2 to 4 minutes, which is kedei achilat prap, how long it takes to eat half a loaf of bread, which is normally the time period we give to be considered one eating in isor with prohibited food and with mitzvot, and you eat it together. You should do that. But diavad, if you ate one kazayit, have it from the top one rather than the middle one, because that's what most Rishonim say you should have your matzah from. That's just halacha l'maisa. Instead of just going after your WhatsApp you sent me today, right? So that's halacha l'maisa, right? That's the halacha l'maisa over here. Okay? Now I would say this is very relevant to me because Priya will have a beautiful seder with many, many people. I think you'll be joining us, Ben, right? Yeah, we're looking forward. So you don't have to stuff everyone 2 kazeisim down, right? Because no one else had that in mind, but that's what you've got to do. But it's not chavilot. It's not 2 bundles of mitzvah because hamatzi is just a preparation for it. Now I want to ask you one last question. I just want to bring in Rav Asher Weissebek because I know he's very close to Elisha. I want to ask you, someone mentioned in the beginning, that the arba kosot we have on Pesach, we have 4 cups of wine. And famously, as people who went to Jewish schools, they correspond to 4 expressions of freedom. Hashem said to Moshe, I'll take you out, I'll redeem you. Many people understand, I'll emotionally free you, which become more relevant nowadays. It was the emotional trauma is the 3rd cup, because it's not enough just to take someone out of Mitzrayim. There were hundreds of years in slavery, and they were broken people, which is why they couldn't fight Amalek. And Ibn Ezra explains this extensively in many of the parashiyot of Shemot. And V'ga'alti he doesn't say this, but V'ga'alti could be an emotional freedom. He'll heal the trauma inside them, which has become more relevant nowadays as we're all, I guess, more aware of it. And V'lakachti, I'll take you from me as a people through the Torah. That's the beautiful romance of Seder night. And the rabbis made a mitzvah. We're going to have 4 cups of wine corresponding to those 4. Not written in the Torah. There's a mitzvah to have kiddush, like every chag. There's a mitzvah to have simchat yom tov, which may be from the Torah. But the 4 cups are rabbinical rule. And you have to wait till after nightfall to start. And Diane Simons, my Rebbe, has written a whole tshuva what to do in old age homes, what I want to start before, because really the cups have to be together with the matzah, and that's how you celebrate your Yetziat Mitzrayim. What's the difference between mentioning Exodus from Egypt and the rest of the year and mentioning it on Pesach is because Pesach is experiential, the Brisker Rav says, and therefore it's about the matzah and the marah and the wine together, and you express the story through what's on the table, and it's part of it's rabbinical. It's a rabbinical mitzvah. Erev Pesach, look at number 10. Erev Pesachim and Erev Pesach samoch lemincha, close to mincha, lo yochal adam ad shetechshav, don't eat till it gets dark. V'afilu anisha b'Yisrael, even a poor person, lo yochal ad sheyesev, don't eat until he leaves. Lo yiftuchu lo me'aba kosot shel yayin, you shouldn't make less for him, which means you should ensure everyone in your community has 4 cups of wine. We do halach ma'anya, we open the door at the beginning of the seder, etc. Okay. Arba kasot, says Rashi, Keneged Arba L'Shonei Gula, Amrom B'Galot Mitzrayim, V'Tzeti, V'Hitzalti, V'Ga'alti, V'Lokachti. 4 expressions, 4 cups. It's really beautiful. It's the most easy one somehow to understand. It's the most beautiful, it's the easy one to get inspired for 4 cups of wine. There's 4 expressions of connection, there's 4 expressions of freedom, it's all there for you. Okay. A few people mentioned at the beginning, that is chavilat. You're doing the mitzvah of kiddush and arba kasot together. There's 2 separate mitzvot. The birchat hamotzi was like a prerequisite, not 2 separate. You're bundling kiddush and the mitzvah of v'hotzeti on 1 cup. You're bundling the mitzvah of birkat hamazon later on and the 3rd cup on 1 cup. Why isn't that bundling them together?
One is
There's
the
no way
right
to, like, you can't do it the other way.
So do it in the middle of Magid, your cup. I don't know.
But then it's going to be 5 cups. Like if you do Kiddush in separate one.
But we'll know it's a separate one. We'll say that's Kiddush and this one's for Magid. Only because I know what you mean. You're not allowed to be most of the crisis. If you forget to lean for the 3rd or 4th cup, you don't go back. You're halakhically correct. I don't know your name. I'm sorry.
Alon.
So Alon is saying that obviously you've got to put it together because you'll be adding on to the cups, which is deemed to be like you're not allowed to do that. But that's fine. So we won't add on to it. We'll just separate the mitzvah of cups and kiddush. We'll say this is kiddush. You'll be pretty drunk by the end of Seder, that's for sure, right? You'll be literally wheelbarrows. They'll have to be outside, no sedarim, because like you'll have like 6 cups. Yeah, fair, but it's a night of freedom. You know? It's not so bad. It's more important than drinking on Purim. That's chavilah. They say in Yeshiva, they used to say that the one night, like on Shavuot, everyone stays up. Do you have to? Do you not have to? For Pesach, everyone goes to sleep. Whereas the much bigger mitzvah to stay up on Pesach night. Because there's a mitzvah, right? You should, until you're sleeping, you should talk about the halachot. Interesting. The rules of, maybe that's an interesting one anyway, or the story itself, until you fall asleep. I don't do that either. And we have a quick seder at home because it just mucks up my whole day next day otherwise. And I can't sit still for too long for every question. But why is it? Like, you were never a philosopher until now. Like, why do you suddenly care about all these things? I told you about Torah yesterday. You rather spoke Lashon Hara. And suddenly you're saying, but surely the 7 heavens. Like, come on. You just read that in your Article Haggadah a few minutes ago. So I'm not so into lengthening out as well. Like, as Chataya Animas Karayon, I mentioned my sins. But actually, we should really be. I just get very tired very quickly. I'm a morning person, not a night person at all. So I find it very hard actually Seder night. I find it very hard to stay up and be inspired. That's just me. But really, you should be. But I also the next day, sure, I want to daven properly. That's my own little things. But interestingly, you should stay up. So let's do loads of cups of wine. Don't bundle them together. So, interestingly, there's a Ramosha Feinstein about this, but it's easier just because it's a bit late already. I'll say what Rav Asher Weiss says. Look at 11, just to connect. Purim is the time of hidden miracles. Esther is hidden. Esther's sniut, which means sniut is not only a manifestation in clothes. Sniut is a manifestation of the way you serve Hashem. She doesn't tell Achashverosh she's from a royal family. She comes from Rachel, the Gemara says. And Rashi says when Rachel gave the simonim to Leah, she gave them but sniut, which means she didn't make a big deal about the chesed that she did. And Hashem loves that. Like she was in the kitchen with Leah, she's like, yeah, these are like a few signs. She didn't say like, I'm doing a mitzvah with you and these are the chesed I'm going to do. And I thought Esther came from that kind of lineage, and that's Purim. Pesach is revealed. Okay, but there's a connection. Chayev l'shloach 11 לחבורה שתי מנות בשר או של מיני אוכלים שנאמר ומשלוח מנות איש לרעהו שתי מנות לאיש אחד. Everyone's got the leftover shlachwana now at home, and you've got the 2 manot to 1 person, 2 portions, etc. People get upset because nowadays it's such a big thing. When we were young, there was just a cake. I don't remember those times. You swap with your friend, like the story of the Gemara, they killed each other at the Purim meal. I'm sure you do the same. You could send meals to each other if you can't afford it. It's inclusive, beautiful. There's also mitzvah to give poor people money. So ask many achronim on the Torah event, can we do 2 with 1? Chavilat. So someone's poor. I don't want to point out anyone here. And I'm going to give you shlach manot, and you're also poor. So this is worth 10 quid. Okay, you can say you need cash, but okay, it's the value of money. I've done 2 with 1. Chavilat. I'm bundling it together. And that's one big question in the Achronim. Presumably it was relevant, right? People did that. You don't find anywhere they discuss chavilot. It's whether you have to give 3 people and not 2, and mitzvah was to give 2 shlach manot and 1 poor person, and you haven't done that. No one anywhere in the whole literature of Purim says you're bundling the mitzvah of matanot le'evyonim together with the mishlach manot. But says Rabbi Shawai, so where's that gone? It's a good question, right? It says Rabbi Shawai because chavilot, like we said, different person here. What? Oh my gosh, where's the other guy gone? I must have said something. I don't know. But there was another person in your. This is crazy. Unless I haven't even had 6 cups of wine, right? There was new technology. Right? It's virtual reality. This is the future. But there was someone else in your. What's your name? Sorry. So in John's seat, there was Daniel who was asking some quite intelligent questions. And he said before, what's the reason for it? He didn't like the whole perception idea. And I get him. And many Rishonim get him as well. And he said it's about concentration. And Sinner mentioned, Rabbi Dweck would say, because the Rambam would say that concentration mitzvah is me'akev, and it's l'shitose. It got very yeshivish before with how it all started. And I think it was good. And many achronim say, like you say in Chavilah, and your predecessor as well. My gosh, I literally thought I was seeing things there. But at the end of the day, the Gemara says the rabbis used to move from one area of the room to another when they used to pray. That only happens to me on Shabbat usually, but not usually on Sunday where I lower my spiritual level. But either way, the reason, and Rabbi Shawai said, I thought of this, but I was happy he said it as well because I knew it was a legitimate thought. He says the reason why chavilot is there, the reason why it's forbidden, is because it looks like a burden. Looks to an onlooker like a burden. And no one knows this guy's bank account. Well, in Gold's Green, they'd say then, I knew his shver bought my house and he doesn't really own it. Punk, I do his accounts and I know he's overdraft. But in a regular place, especially in this day and age where poverty is not obvious. And today they're all collecting. The part of the Sunday afternoon activity for many of us now is going through charity campaigns. The question is which one you are, which one you're not. I used to feel guilty about taking. People used to say, like a year ago, I'm in the from world, in the world here, charity campaigns are like, instead of Netflix, right? This is our entertainment that we have. What do we do with the kids? We put them in front of the charity. This guy's obviously made money, etc. So I used to think, a year ago, it's called me up, Amrom, can we take a page? You know people who made the veil, Shirim, maybe you can ask them. I used to think if you take a page, then that's a big commitment. I was like, I'm not sure. All right, I'll take it. And then you have to ask people. Now I realize you could take a page, you block the number of the guy that called you, and that's it. You say yes originally, then you're done. But either way, no one knows whether who's poor, who's rich. No one's any idea. So it's not obvious to the onlooker. It doesn't look like you're trying to be a cheapskate and getting away with it. I'm giving you shlach manot. You happen to be very poor. Maybe you'll say if he's wearing rags, but even though the actual action of what you're doing doesn't necessarily imply, it's a rabbinical rule, right? So we want to look at all the variables maybe. The actual action doesn't imply that, so it's okay. And says Rabbi Asher Wise, and says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in another tshuva as well, but I'll say, well, it's shorter. Rabbi Asher is always he summarized things very beautifully. There's the same with Kiddush as well. It's not obvious you're doing you're just doing 2 mitzvot with 1 cup. There's nothing extra you're saying because it's arba kosat. You're making kiddush, and hey, you're so cool. You've done another mitzvah as well, and that's not chavilot. So let's just go back. We've learned. I would say we've summarized in an hour a lot of the principles, and I would hope you'd use honestly this share as a reference if you hit this again, because I've done a lot of research just to make sure that you have the broad scope of what it is. There's a lot of more details as we've discussed, but I think in my feeble understanding, this is a lot of it. There's chavilot of sota, which is 2 mitzvot next to each other, doing them next to each other or consecutively, who cares? It's 2 mitzvot, bundling, keep away from that. That's one principle, which is legit. Some people would say, don't take out 2 sifrei Torah on a special Shabbat. Wait till you put 1 back, then take 1. We say the Rambam says it means don't lay them at the same time, right? Remember that? That's 1. That I would say is chapter 1, even a different book. The Gemara often does this, but that's a different talk. We often use the same rule, but it means completely different things. Then the Gemara says, in Psachim and in Brachot and in other Moed Katan, Tosfot says, there's chavilot, we're using 1 utensil for 2. True. Don't do Kiddush and Birkat Hamazon on the same. Don't get it on the cup of wine. And that's true in other mitzvot as well, maybe. But we limited that in the shiur a few times. Birkat hanenim, which translates as bracha on food or drink, together with the mitzvah, is not counted as bundling. Because you're just making the bracha to have the drink and do the mitzvah. So if I look at you, I know that you're doing that. It's not like you were going to separately have a drink and make a bracha on that, and then go do kiddush and you bundle them together. You understand what I'm saying? You're just making the bracha to have the drink. Are you all clear with that? This is not considered to be maybe a mess, right? Like you're pushing it in. You need to break it on to make the sheva bracha. You can have one cost maybe. All right. That was part 3. There's part 1 completely separate. Part 2, which is 2 mitzvot or 1, don't do it. Part 3, if it's a bracha of making a food, could be a Torah rule, the K'nai Yeshua says. Like it's not a joke making a bracha on food. There's many Rishonim and Achronim that could imply it's a Torah principle. We don't paskin like that necessarily. That's for another share. I don't know if I'll be invited back after all this Litzanas, right? I don't know if I ever get invited back. It's a very interesting point. Make a bracha on food is a big, big deal. And there could be a Torah, but that, it's not considered to be a burden. It's 2 mitzvot. You get 1 tick from Hashem, who's watching your mitzvot for making a bracha on food, 1 tick from Hashem and for your eternal life for matzah. Well done. Right? Really good. But it's not considered to be a burden. And finally, we came, I think, to the most beautiful point, which Rav Moshe Feinstein says in terms of getting married on Chol HaMoed. And Rav Asher Weiss says with the 4 cups, and we saw in the Shlach Manot, Matana Levionim is the same, is that you could do 1 mitzvah which happens to kill 2 birds with 1 stone if it's not obvious. Because no one looks to you and thinks you're trying to get mitzvah done. You know the person's poor, you're giving Shlach Manot. And you know and I know that you're doing this and there's 2 mitzvot associated with it. But it's not obvious and the action doesn't show, it doesn't tell that you're trying to do 2 things. If the action doesn't tell, then maybe it's permitted. And that's why it's not chaviyot. And on that note, I wish you all a chakasha v'sameach, and thank you for asking me to speak. You should have a good Yom Tov, and you should have a chayil, shkayach. Shechan is also together. It's for the same reason. But Shechianu is also, the Achronim say it's very separate. We just put it there. There's nowhere else to put it.